guys, and welcome to another edition of The Point. And I have a very special guest with me today, my hot smoking wife, Debbie. And we are leaving tomorrow to go and celebrate 44 years of marriage. And I asked Deb to come on and today and just let's talk about those 44 years. It all began back in typing class, our sophomore year of high school. Deb was sitting literally this close, just beside me, and I was a football player. Deb was a cheerleader, and I wasn't really interested in dating Debbie at the time. And a real good friend that I played basketball with, Keith Sturgill, dared me to ask the Debbie Stallard out. And I didn't give a rip. And so I asked Debbie at typing one time, hey, let's meet you go out to get something to eat. Or she said no. And it ticked me off. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said no because you were dating somebody else.
I can't remember, but obviously you do.
I think you were dating Terry, and you said no because you had a boyfriend. So during typing, I started flirting with you. And
you cheated off my papers, too.
Well, you couldn't really cheat. Typing is because you had to type the minute.
But you did.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't remember that, but thank you. So I started asking her out, and finally you agreed to go to a basketball tournament, a game. And I remember telling all my buddies you were going to meet me there, and you didn't show up.
I don't even remember
that.
I
do. Oh, I was heartbroken. You didn't show up. It was the Coalfield Classic.
So we were meeting there?
You were going to ride with some of the other cheerleaders. We were going to watch a team that we're getting ready to play, and you didn't show up. So the next day, I started talking to you, and that's when I guess he broke up with you. And the following week, we went out. You remember where we went?
Oh, yeah.
Where we go?
We went to a movie to see California Suites and McDonald's. But you have to remember, in Wise, Virginia, McDonald's had just opened. That was a big, big deal. Well, there probably were some other places, but McDonald's was all right.
And do you remember what vehicle we went in?
I'm sure the Mustang,
Blue
Fly.
Blue Fly, my 68 convertible Mustang. It was so good.
And the door would come open and fly open.
I literally had to reach over and grab you one time. I got the latch fixed after she about fell out on a curve.
Yeah.
I love that stupid car. Yeah. Do you remember the first time I ever kissed you?
Yes.
Where?
On my front porch.
Yep. Do you remember who said I love you first?
Oh, you did.
And where was that?
Was that the baseball field?
Back of the baseball field. Yes, I did. But now, once I said it, you jumped all over it.
Oh, absolutely.
You said, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you.
I did. I was just waiting on you to say, because back in those days, the guys took the lead.
I do remember telling you I loved you first. For some reason, we didn't talk on the phone a lot while we were dating. Why?
Well, you said you didn't like to talk on the phone.
I didn't even call you every night or anything.
I don't remember that.
We did begin writing love letters to each other.
Oh, yes.
And
I still have all of mine.
I know. I don't know where mine are, but I do remember reading yours over and over and looking forward to getting them every single day.
In between class periods, we would meet up somewhere and walk to class, and we'd switch notes, exchange letters.
Well, that kind of led into getting a lot more serious, obviously, and through the course of time, we got married, had Michelle. That all took place during our senior year. We were king and queen of the prom.
That's right. I wore a yellow dress, and he wore a yellow tux.
I literally looked like Big Bird, I'm not going to lie.
That's what you did back then. You wore the color of the tuxes of the color of the girl's dress.
I'd always wanted to go to Virginia Tech to play football. And do you remember why I didn't go to Virginia Tech?
Because they wouldn't allow Michelle and I to come up until after the first semester or the first year.
1 year.
Remember.
They'd had some other players who had a wife and a child, and that had bad experiences that they didn't literally give themselves to football, which I understood. But I told Virginia Tech no. And when I finally said yes to Clemson, Coach Ford said, I have no problem with you bringing Debbie and Michelle. We moved into married housing. Spent the next 5 years at Clemson in married housing. No.
Do you remember our address there?
I don't.
21B Bar Street.
That is right. 21B Bar Street. Well, we didn't live there the whole 5 years. I stand corrected. We ended up moving into some apartments the last couple of years. Where was
Hunters Glen.
Moved into Hunters Glen.
It's Central, actually.
Yep. They had a pool.
Yes.
And we literally thought we were staying at a 5-star Cancun resort just because we had a pool.
Yep.
So ended up leaving Clemson and going to Green Sea to teach and coach.
Yes.
Now, while we were at Clemson, you always worked. And what was your main job at Clemson?
I worked with one of the coaches' wives. At,
Coach McCorvey.
Coach McCorvey's wife, Miss Ann McCorvey, at Pendleton Middle School. And I was like her assistant for special needs kids. So it was very much a learning experience there.
When you talk about being flat broke, Deb did all the checkbook back then. That's back when you wrote down every little check and balanced the checkbook. And she did. And there were nights that we would call Domino's, and there'd be $7 in the checking account, and we'd get a $5 pizza.
Yep, and that left money for a tip too, for the driver.
We literally lived dime by dime.
Because we knew we were getting paid the next day, so
you were.
We didn't live too dangerously. We knew we were getting paid the next day, so we'd be okay.
And where that I didn't live in the college dorms, I got a stipend for housing and for food because I didn't eat the food that was given to athletes either. So I got that every quarter, and that would be how we paid our rent. We'd pay 2, 3, 4 months of rent right then.
Before we spent it on something else, I'd go ahead and pay the rent up till the next time the check came in.
Those were very difficult days trying to be a D1 athlete, go to school, be a father, and be a husband. Those were tough days because I so desired to be a great football player. Anyway, long story short, got hurt, finished school, left, went to Green Sea. And I began to coach and teach. And you got a job at?
I first started working at a daycare. And then I worked there about 6 months.
It just wasn't a good job.
And I went to the bank.
And you worked at the bank forever.
I did.
As a bank teller. We didn't have a lot of money then either.
Nope.
Do you remember what my first paycheck was as a teacher and coach?
I still had the paycheck
Do you really? How much?
You brought home, and I don't know what was before taxes. You brought home $750 a month.
And our rent was
$250
a month.
Yep.
And I got we moved there in January. I got saved in April, and we started tithing the Sunday after I got saved. So we automatically wrote a check for $75, and then had our rent.
No, it was more than $75 because that's what you brought home.
That is, and I did all of it. You're right. I'd write 100.
I can't remember, but I know we did more than.
You know, I don't want to talk about money, but through those years of not having a dime to our name, we lived a great life.
Yeah. Also, let's talk about when you were a senior at, I think it was a junior senior at Clemson. They started sending us all these credit cards.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, and we thought we were.
Oh, yes.
I remember buying a ice chest at Kmart just because I wanted to use it. I don't even know if we ever used that thing.
Do you remember the first thing we ever went in debt for?
A TV.
Yep.
One of them great big box TV. Kmart.
Kmart and Anderson.
At Kmart and Anderson.
Yep. Our payments, I think, were like $40-some a month.
I would go buy that TV again, though. That TV was so huge, it looked like, and it had a remote. The remote was the greatest thing there was.
I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, it had a remote. I remember the remote very much so.
I don't know about that. Back in the 80s, did we have remotes?
Yes, that one did. It was so good.
Ours did. Ours did.
Moved to Green Sea, and I got saved immediately. April 12th, 1987, in case anybody didn't know when I got saved, April 12th, 1987. And you began to work at the bank, and they were great years, and I believe some of the reason they were great years was because we surrounded ourselves with such godly people.
Yes. Just recently, I had a young girl ask me what was our hardest years and what were the easiest, and I said, I thought about it, and I told her, and she asked for some advice, and that was one of the things I said. At your age and your kids' age, find you friends that you can go and do stuff with and hang out and do stuff because you surround yourself with people. Mm-hmm. You don't always have to have money to go and do stuff. I know things have changed since we were
but we would
there.
go over Curtis and Karen's house and just hang out, or Kevin and Polly's, or Morris and Dean's, just some of those people that we surrounded ourselves with. Right. And none of us had a lot of money.
We would cook out. We would grill out. The kids would play. And
Curtis and I, Curtis attends our church now. Love Curtis and Karen Middleton. But we got into Tecmo Bowl.
Oh, yes.
And we would go and grill out and play Tecmo Bowl till 1 or 2 in the morning.
Remember the first grill we had? First grill?
No.
Mom and Dad bought it for us Christmas one year. It was his first gas grill. Let me say gas grill.
Do, and they came over. Chris and Karen came over to play Tecmo Bowl.
Yep.
And I put the steaks on, not knowing how much gas. And
it was bad.
And you and I went and bought some more steaks.
You couldn't even eat them. They were burnt to a crisp.
Great years. But if there were some things that we could do over during those years, even those good as they were, what were some of the things that you would say that we probably could have done better or made our marriage better? Because those were tough years also.
I would say we've really never done a lot of stuff together. Our hobbies are...
You like to shop? I want to play golf and hunt.
Our hobbies aren't even close to being the same. And I would go with you when you play golf, but I didn't play golf, and I would ride with you or walk. But I guess looking back, you see people doing stuff together as a couple, and I don't think it really hurt us. But I wonder what it would have been had we had more of our hobbies.
Yeah, well,
that we did together.
We did so much together as a family because we were both very family oriented, and once we had Andrew while we were at the beach with me teaching and coaching, we did a lot of family stuff, and then we also did a lot of stuff with the other families.
Right.
And I just never did feel real guilty about, okay, I'm going to go play golf with the guys, or I'm going to go hunt.
You're right. You never did feel guilty.
I didn't. I felt like, I almost felt like I needed to get away, and I think men do.
You know what? Looking back on it now, that was a good thing. I probably needed you to get away.
You probably did.
It was like, go.
We've been married 44 years now, and we never have done a lot. People say, wouldn't you like your wife to go hunting with you?
No.
I'm like, no, I don't. And I've heard people ask you, don't you want Dean going shopping with you?
No, absolutely not.
I don't. No. I don't. If I had to go back myself in those times, I think I would have tried to date you more. Because I was coaching. I was out late of an evening all the time. And I coached football and basketball, so every Friday night there were games. And then as soon as football's over, it was right into basketball.
And we had to get babysitters, and we didn't have the money, to pay babysitters.
But I think dating your spouse is so important.
Yes.
And we didn't do that a lot. And even today, again, it's me, my schedule. I'm not home. I'm here. I'm there. I'm teaching in this continent. I go to this continent. I'm pulled in so many directions that even today, I'm glad that we're about to get away just to spend some time together. But so if I had to say something to a lot of men, I would say date your wives, make it a priority, and start doing that now.
Yeah. And I think this, I talked about this just the other day. We were talking about this at home. I think it's important, and people probably do this more now than we did, is take time for a vacation to go with your family, go somewhere every year to relax.
We both grew up with parents who did that.
Yeah. We always went to different parts of the U.S. and we would take, when Andrew got older and Michelle was married at that time, but we would go to Cancun and places, which was great, and I'm not down it at all, but I just don't feel like our kids got to see a lot of the U.S. But I would say take time to travel together. I mean, you don't even have to go far, and do things like that together as a family, even as a spouse. And that was one thing that I didn't do good at, as wanting to go places and give up some time to go.
Today, I think one of the mistakes so many marriages make is the kids rule the house.
Yes.
And so if the kid's playing AAU ball,
it dictates.
It dictates, and we never did do that. We didn't allow.
It dictates your schedule.
And some of you aren't going to like this, but once our boys started playing sports, I told them you get two. I'm not following you around Pickens County or Horry County or whatever it is to play sports constantly. So I said, pick two. But
things have changed even since, Jacob's our youngest, even since he was in school. Now it is an every weekend thing. I
wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
And in saying that today, I disagree with some people listening aren't going to like this, but I think you should have your kids in church.
Right.
Where were our kids every Sunday?
In church.
Every Sunday. And people tell me this all the time. Well, you're going to run your kids off. They used to tell us that all the time. You're going to run your kids off. And there's all three of them sitting in the second service every Sunday. It's because they were brought up in a house that God was first.
I think we did. I always tell people this: cover your kids, cover your marriage, cover
in
prayer. And one of the things that we did do was we covered our kids in prayer. And I'll say this: praise Jesus, we never, and our kids weren't perfect. We weren't perfect parents, but we never had to say, yes, you're going to church today. There was never an argument of, I don't want to go. Do we have to go?
Well, I think part of that is we taught our kids the difference between religion and relationship,
Right.
and our children fell in love with Jesus.
Right.
And that's obvious. I mean, Andrew and Jax just got back from Guatemala with me. Lawson is in India today.
Right.
They are being shown what a walk with Christ looks like, not go to church and go to heaven.
Right.
It is a true walk with Christ.
Sean Lawson on staff, and Jacob does FCA. So
all three of our children serve at this church in a vital way.
Right.
And then our grandsons are now beginning to serve.
And they're teaching their kids that it's not, as you say, that you have to go, but you get to go to church.
For any
We're
dads that
blessed
are
with
listening, Deb can attest to this. Once I got saved, I prayed and read the Bible with my children every night. I will not say every night, but if I'm at a football game till midnight, I didn't do it. But my children were brought up hearing their dad pray and their dad reading the Bible with them. Mm-hmm. And you have to set that as a priority in their life.
Has become a habit.
Something else I wish I had done differently was that I'm a prayer warrior, but our DNAs are so different. I am up early every day, and I go to bed early every night. Debbie could sleep, even today. Deb likes to sleep a lot more than me, and she likes to stay up later. But we've never really prayed together, as in, Deb, let me grab your hand,
Right.
and let me pray over you and pray over our family. And I have no problem doing that. I've done it. But we didn't start that as a habit, and I wish we would have done that as a habit.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We should have. And there's a book that I always tell people and recommend for people. It's an older book. It's by Stormy R. Martin, and it's Power of a Praying Mother, Power of a Praying Wife. But the Power of the Praying Wife was the first one that I read. Phenomenal. If you like to read, it will help you tremendously to know how to have a prayer life for your husband and your spouse. So
let's talk about some things that weren't so easy. What would you say through 44 years? And I can answer instantly. What was our 2 top arguments in 44 years?
Well, the first would be kids.
Okay.
And I'd say finances.
Nope.
No, I don't. Oh, the S
You
word.
say it.
The S word.
Sex.
Yes.
For me, when it came to the kids, I always felt like you became more of a mother than a wife. Is that a fair way of saying it? Mm-hmm. We've talked about this many times.
Right.
I told her, you married me, you didn't marry the kids. And when we first got married, and we were so young,
Right.
but she wanted Michelle to be in there with us, and I didn't want Michelle in there. I wanted to have sex with my wife. And that was a problem at Clemson. And then when we did get Michelle out, had Andrew, and you wanted Andrew to be in there with us. And I didn't want children in my bedroom because I wanted to have sex with my wife. So when we say sex, it wasn't like, okay, I was out or Deb was out. It was, I just wanted to have more. And Deb was being a mother, and she started at such a young age. I think that created some problems sexually, and I just wanted to more, and you didn't. And
Our sex drives are tremendously different.
well, I want 2 more, no doubt about that. But I'm also a man of God that believes in the Bible and that says, don't say no to me. And so that there have been some arguments over that before.
Right.
So how would you address that to women listening today?
In fact, I just had this conversation. One thing, and mothers are tired.
I agree with that, yes.
And as we said, mothers and fathers and families this day and time, they're gone about every night of the week. So when they get home, they've worked all day, they're tired, they've been pulled this way and they've been pulled that way.
Agree.
They get into bed and they're like, just let me lay here and rest and not have to
and then you're asleep.
do anything, just not think, not anything. And then before you know it, you're asleep. And then the next day, and the cycle just keeps going. You have to.
Well, that's what we called it. I would get mad.
That's back to the book of His Needs, Her Needs.
Great book.
So sometimes I did have to say, this is so much more for him than for me. But in the end of it, it became so fulfilling of knowing that I needed that too, more so than the original thought.
I hope a lot of married couples will hear this, not from a pastor's heart, but from a man of God's heart. Sexual intimacy is how God created us to bring us together. It's kind of like the glue that holds us together. Sex isn't just for a good feeling. Sex is to bring a husband and wife together. That's when it says, and the two became one. That's why when you have sex with people before marriage, it completely messes up what sex is.
Right, because you bring that love.
God knew what he was doing.
Right.
And so a lot of times you thought I just wanted to because I liked sex, and it wasn't the case. I wanted to because I wanted to feel closer to my wife.
Right.
And so for ladies that are listening, I always felt like I was a husband that did give the kids baths. I did wash my own clothes. I did vacuum the floors. I never did wash dishes. I never did do dishes. But I did do all that other stuff, and I tried to because I wanted that time with you also.
Right.
And that still hadn't changed.
You're very good about that, yes.
The other one, when we say arguments, was kids. We didn't argue over the kids and wanting to raise the kids. It was you wanted to put the kids before me. Let me tell you a great story. Andrew and I are going to play in a father-son golf tournament in July at the beach. Oh, my
goodness.
And so when I signed us up, it's a 3-day tournament. Cannot wait. We've never done it before. Debbie's exact response when I told her was, what about Jacob? And my words were, what about him? She said, what are you going to do with him? I said, Deb, it's a father-son tournament, not a father-son's tournament. Debbie's response, well, what about Jacob? I said, babe, I guess I'll take him next year. Debbie's response, well, what are you going to do this year with Jacob?
I don't think I
Oh, no, I promise this is how it went. Until I finally said, Debbie, Jacob can't go this year. When I say we had fights about kids, that's what I'm referring to, in that you always have to put them above the marriage. Ladies, if you're listening, I know there'll be a lot of ladies listen to this. The children should never come before the marriage. That is a biblical perspective. And Deb and I have had arguments over this. Because one day the kids are going to leave, and then you're just going to be left here with me. Yeah.
It's just the two of you.
And well, I think we're very good empty nesters.
Yes.
But one of the reasons we're such good empty nesters is our kids are still right here.
Right.
And those 4 grandsons.
Yep.
So how would you say you looked at the kids differently than I did?
Well, I think, as you just mentioned earlier, you were gone a lot. You know,
even through life, I was.
Yes,
you're right.
you when we first got married, you'd go visit your parents in Washington
I was traveling
State.
Football team,
and every other summer, Michelle and I would get to go with you. But then and then you'd go out there and work for your dad, so you were gone then. Then traveled with Clemson, and schools, and then you started going to seminary, and just lots.
Then I went to start speaking places.
Lots of times. I would never say even compare it to being a single parent, because praise Jesus, I didn't have to do that. But you were gone a lot. So as I've told you before, life still happened when you were gone.
I would call her from Africa. This is 15 years ago, and be asking her, does she miss me? And she'd be like, well, I do, but life goes on here. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted to hear, but I understand.
Right. We didn't miss a beat. So I was always felt like I was there for them. So when you came home, everything was still just flowing like it did, because you were gone. So that part of me as the mother was, sometimes I was the mother and the father, both.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Very fair. Yeah. I will applaud Deb in that when I did get saved, I did fall radically in love with Jesus. And Deb saw the difference in me and has supported me in that. And even as I have gone away for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, has never complained about it. Mm-hmm. But I think you saw just how much I fell in love with Jesus. Yeah. Well, if you could give couples advice, and we've had a 44-year run that has been a great run, but there's been a lot of bumps in the road.
Oh, yeah.
What are a couple things that you'd give advice to ladies or to men on how to make marriages better? Because there's so many marriages that are falling apart. I
think one of the things that lots of times when I, talk with wives about their marriages or whatnot, I have to I always ask them this. I mean, they're going through stuff and going through the bumpy times, and I ask them this: what made you fall in love with him?
So good.
It's still there. It may be changed a little bit, but sometimes you may have to move back some curtains or some clouds to see what is in there that originally made you fall in love with him. So just remind yourself that it's probably still there. Life changes things. Things happen in life to change. But I still say that why you originally fell in love with him is still there.
Why'd you fall in love with me?
Uh,
You shouldn't have to think.
I got to think about that.
No, you should. That should be instant.
Your personality was, believe it or not, you were lots and lots of fun back then. You always made me laugh. I laughed at you all the time. I don't remember now if it was because you were goofy or because I thought you were funny or maybe all the above. But laughter, and I always say laughter's good.
Yep.
So I would think the first thing was probably your personality.
I pursued you very hard also.
Yeah.
I'd say for me, I always thought you were beautiful. And you were fun with me. I enjoyed being with you. I just wanted to be with you all the time. I wanted to hold your hand. I wanted to hear you laugh at me. I wanted to have sex with you. I just wanted to be with you. And that still hadn't changed. I'm going to talk about sex again for a second.
Okay.
Here we go. I want to make sure I say this in a very Christ-like manner. Ladies, when women sit on my couch and I look at them, I'm talking about like in my office on my couch at counseling, they will say to me, we don't have a very good sex life. In fact, it's been 3-4 months. What are you thinking? Okay, sex is most men's number one love language. Right. To the men, okay, if your wife is not fulfilling your sexual needs, that does not give you the right to go out and fulfill them somewhere else. It's unacceptable. In a marriage, that's where I'm going with this. In a marriage, you have to make a decision at some point. Do you want to please yourself, your spouse, or God? And when you put Christ first and you begin to understand that pleasing him is the most important thing, then you'll be able to be the spouse that God wants you to be. And what I come to find out through the course of marriage was a lot of times the reason Deb didn't want to have sex wasn't because I wasn't being the husband I needed to be.
Right.
I wasn't fulfilling the needs that she needed in order for her to want to have the sex with me. And then, as you said earlier, the vicious cycle would start. Mm-hmm. So the deeper you fall in love, the better sex should be and the more often it should be. But we do go through different cycles of life.
Right.
Kids being one of those.
Right.
So, and then men, as Deb was given a word, lead your family spiritually. Be the pastor of your family.
And wives, let them lead.
It's good, Deb.
Let them lead.
You have always done that.
It's not, I mean, I know when they say lead, it's not a power thing. There's a difference between power and letting them lead spiritually. Let them lead.
And you've always been a very submissive wife, but now we've talked about this from the stage many times. Submission doesn't mean, Deb, go get me a Coke. And
right.
It means, Deb will give me her point of view, and no doubt about that now. Free, yes, too often. But when it came down to it, babe, I really believe when we gave every dime we had to this church, a kid in college in our 50s, Deb said, are you sure about this? I said, Deb, I really feel like that's what God's telling me to do. Okay. And so Deb has always followed. But I think it also comes from I've led spiritually in a way that you didn't mind to follow me. Right.
I trusted you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew you were going to lead us where we needed to go. You never failed us in that. So, I could trust and honor and respect you for that.
And she has, in 20 years, this church will be 20 years old in just a few months. You've always been a great pastor's wife.
I hope so.
I think, and let's end talking about being a pastor and pastor's wife. I think a lot of times, like this week, I've been getting hammered on Facebook again, and a lot of it's just lies. It's just, I'm like, I never said that. That's not true. That hurt you more than it hurt me. The things that people were saying about me, and I'm like, that's just part of being a pastor. And I say, and you've heard me say this, the number one reason 99% of pastors will never pastor a mega church, they can't handle the pain. It's just part of the call. And for me, I always felt like my biggest job was to try to protect you from that. Deb's not on the stage, and we don't try to make Deb this high-profile pastor's wife like a lot do.
A lot of people don't know who I am.
But I've done that intentionally to protect you. What would you say has been some of the hardest parts of being a pastor's wife of a church this large in this small of a community? Besides seeing people attacking me.
The hardest thing is, I wish everybody knew your heart. And
I'm very passionate.
Right. And some of the things that you say, I know how you mean them, but it doesn't always
they come
out.
across aggressive.
Right. But I know that you want everything that as a pastor to point to Jesus.
I want people to fall in love with Christ.
Right.
Not a
right.
heaven ticket.
And that's evident. And I tell people what they see on Sunday morning is what you are at home. There's really no difference in Dean Herman Sunday morning to Wednesday morning. It's just who you are. Yeah. But the hardest thing is seeing when I know people write stuff and say stuff about you. I want to protect you from that, just because I know that it's been taken out of context, and it's not always fair.
Speaking of not fair, it's not fair that our children were put under the microscope that they are put under. Yes, they are a pastor's child, but it's like everybody thought they were supposed to walk on water.
Right.
And all of our staff's kids are the same way. It's not fair. People shouldn't put the children under a microscope the way they do, but it's just part of the call.
Right.
And the same with you. People want to point their finger at you.
Well, we do have a higher calling.
I no doubt about that.
Talking about our kids and staff kids, there is a higher calling. So you do have to be careful.
Well, one of the qualifications that the Bible talks about is being able to lead your home, to be in the ministry, and a lot of anyway. Well, after 44 years, I look forward to the next whatever years we have. Love you, baby doll.
Love you.
For all of you out there, what's the point in all of this conversation? I say this from the stage all the time. It's not how you start in life, it's how you finish. Right. Oh, how many people told us never get married because we wouldn't make it?
Oh, yeah.
We're 18 years old, seniors in high school. I'm about to have a child. Don't do it. Don't do it just because you're having a child. You'll never make it.
Here we are.
And here we are 44 years later. Love you, baby doll.
Love you.
Don't worry about how you start so much as how you finish, because God doesn't see us today for what we are, but he sees us for what we can be. Until next time.